It draws more visitors every single year than Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon combined. It is completely free to enter. No ticket, no reservation, no barrier between you and over 800 miles of backcountry, threading through mountains so old they predate the dinosaurs by 100 million years. It sits within a single day's drive of more than half the population of the United States. And since 2007, at least 150 people have died inside it. On June 14th, 1969, Father's Day weekend, a 6-year-old boy named Dennis Lloyd Martin put on a red t-shirt, short green trousers, and a pair of low-cut Oxford shoes, and walked into these mountains on a camping trip with his father, his grandfather, and his older brother. He was playing a game. He slipped behind a bush to loop around and surprise the adults. He was never seen again. Over 1,400 searchers were deployed, 60 Green Berets, helicopters, K-9 units, the FBI, the Red Cross, a search that cost $50,000 in 1969 dollars, the equivalent of nearly $500,000 today. That night, 3 inches of rain fell on the mountain in a matter of hours and erased whatever tracks a 6-year-old boy in Oxford shoes might have left. His grandfather, Clyde Martin, spent years after the official search ended walking those same ridgelines alone. Park rangers reported seeing the old man on the Appalachian Trail 1 year after the disappearance. 2 years after, 4 years after, still looking. Not a shoe, not a thread from that red shirt, nothing. As of 2025, Dennis Martin's case remains the largest search and rescue operation in the history of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 55 years later, no one knows what happened to him, and that is exactly where the real story of this place begins. This national park is loved by millions of visitors every year, but what most people don't know is the dark truth hidden beneath its beauty. Stay until the end to discover the shocking reality. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park covers 522,419 acres, straddling the border of Tennessee and North Carolina, larger than every borough of New York City combined, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island, all of them together, and you would still need to add more land before reaching the park's boundary line. It contains more than 800 miles of hiking trails, over 2,900 miles of streams and rivers. Its highest point, Kuohi, the peak most people still call Clingman's Dome, rises to 6,643 feet, high enough to alter weather systems, high enough to drop temperatures by 20 degrees in under 2 hours, high enough that the summit has never once recorded a temperature above 80 degrees Fahrenheit, not even at the peak of summer. The park receives between 55 and 85 inches of precipitation per year. Higher ridgelines can exceed 100 inches annually, among the wettest places in the entire eastern United States. The name Smoky comes from the bluish haze that perpetually hangs over the mountains, not pollution, not smoke. Hydrocarbons released by the trees themselves, reacting with humidity in the air, the forest exhales, and the breath collects in the valleys and on the peaks, making the mountains look perpetually soft and distant and safe. That is the first thing this park does to you. Before you have taken a single step on a trail, it has already begun to deceive you. In 2024 alone, more than 12 million people entered its boundaries. Many arrived with GPS on their phones, cars in the lots below, the Gatlinburg Strip a 20-minute drive away. They looked at those mist-covered ridges and saw beauty. A day trip, a family outing, a quick hike before dinner. The mountains did not register any of that. Approximately 19,000 documented species of organisms live inside its boundaries. Scientists estimate as many as 80,000 to 100,000 additional species may exist there and have not yet been identified. Tens of thousands of life forms within one park that science has not yet cataloged. The Smokies contain more native tree species than all of Northern Europe. 30 salamander species live here, including the hellbender, which can reach 29 inches in length. The park hosts 240 species of birds, 65 mammal species, and approximately 1,900 black bears, roughly 2 per square mile, one of the densest concentrations on the continent. A quarter of the park's forests are classified as old growth. Some trees have been standing for 500 to 1,000 years. They were already ancient when European settlers arrived, already old when the Civil War happened somewhere in the valleys below them. The Cherokee people, who lived in and around these mountains for millennia, named this place Shakanaj, Land of Blue Smoke. It was not a vacation destination. It was sacred and wild, tumult, and dangerous and alive in ways that have not changed since the last glaciers retreated 20,000 years ago. Into this ancient wilderness, we now send 12 million visitors a year, many of them in flip-flops. Between 2013 and 2023, 104 people died inside Great Smoky Mountains National Park. That placed it fourth on the list of deadliest national parks in the country during that decade. The leading cause of those deaths was not bears, not flash floods, not falls from waterfalls, not getting lost in the backcountry. It was car accidents. 36 of those 104 deaths, more than 1 in 3, happened inside motor vehicles on the park's own roads. Newfound Gap Road, the Gatlinburg Spur, Little River Road. These roads wind through narrow mountain corridors with blind curves, steep drop-offs, sudden wildlife crossings, and drivers so distracted by the view that they stop registering how fast they are moving. Park law enforcement rangers investigate approximately 200 traffic accidents every single year inside the park. One stretch of road in the park contains 313 curves. Most drivers who come here have never navigated anything like it. They come from interstates, from flat highways, from suburbs with roundabouts, and then they are suddenly on a narrow mountain road with a 200-foot drop on one side and a wall of ancient rock on the other, and something moved in the trees. And it is beautiful. It is so beautiful. The danger hiding in plain sight is the one you drove right past on your way in. The second most common cause of death is cardiac events. This might seem straightforward until you consider what the geography actually means for someone who collapses on a trail. If you suffer a heart attack on the Alum Cave Trail, one of the most popular hikes in the park, there is no ambulance that can reach you. The trail ascends more than 2,800 feet in under 5 miles through terrain that cannot accommodate a stretcher except through extraordinary coordinated effort. Response times measured in minutes in a city are measured in hours here. The third leading cause of death is drowning. To understand why, you need to understand a specific place on Little River Road called the Sinks. There is a waterfall there, dropping into an emerald pool of striking clarity. On a hot summer day, it looks like exactly where you want to be. What is invisible from the bank is what is happening beneath the surface. The Sinks was formed by a stretch of river literally dynamited into a new shape by loggers a century ago, blasted to free a log jam. The result funnels enormous volumes of moving water through a pool that looks, from above, almost still. Hydraulics build underneath, currents pull downward. The surface tells you nothing. But the most insidious water danger in the Smokies is not the waterfall you can see, it is the storm you cannot. Mountain rivers here can change in under 30 minutes. A shower 10 miles upstream, on a day when the valley where you are swimming is completely dry and sunny, can send a surge of water downstream with no warning at all. The sky above you stays blue, the air stays warm, and something violent is already moving toward you through the watershed. You do not need a storm overhead to drown in the Smokies. You need a storm somewhere else, in a drainage you have never seen, on a ridgeline you cannot find on your phone. On November 23rd, 2016, a park employee spotted a small fire near the summit of Chimney Tops Trail, less than a single acre. Fire management officers established a containment area of 410 acres, choosing to monitor rather than suppress, consistent with established protocols for remote, difficult terrain. What the plan did not account for was what was already set to happen 5 days later. The entire southeastern United States had been suffering through exceptional drought. Month upon month of below normal rainfall had turned the ancient forest into something it was never meant to be: dry. On November 28th, a weather system dropped sustained winds of 87 miles per hour through the mountain corridors. In a matter of hours, a fire sitting at roughly 70 acres became 17,000 acres. Wind drove burning embers miles ahead of the main fire. Those embers landed on rooftops in Gatlinburg. They hit power lines and ignited secondary fires. The power grid failed. Water pressure dropped. Communication systems became overloaded. Emergency calls from Sevier County were being routed to Putnam County. 14 people were killed. More than 190 were injured. Over 2,400 structures were destroyed or damaged. It became the deadliest wildfire in the eastern United States in modern history. A federal judge later ruled that the National Park Service failed to warn local officials and the surrounding community that the fire posed a threat beyond the park's boundaries. The fire started as a small blaze in a difficult location. It became a catastrophe not because of one single failure, but because of a chain: drought, wind, containment strategy, communication breakdown, delayed warning. Each link held until they all broke simultaneously. That pattern, small things compounding into something uncontrollable, is the defining characteristic of danger in the Smokies. September 2018. A 53-year-old woman named Susan Clements from Cleves, Ohio, was hiking near Clingman's Dome with her daughter. They became separated. Susan missed the turn back to the parking area and continued walking in the wrong direction along the Appalachian Trail. She was wearing a light sweater, leggings, nylon workout pants, and a clear plastic poncho purchased at a gift shop. That evening, temperatures dropped into the 40s. Rain moved in. At nearly 7,000 feet, there is almost always wind. 7 days later, her body was found barely 2 miles from the parking area in a creek drainage called Huggins Creek. The medical examiner stated she died from hypothermia and exposure, noting her clothing was not sufficient for the adverse weather. When they found her, she had stripped to the waist and removed her shoes. This, known clinically as paradoxical undressing, is one of hypothermia's cruelest final stages. As the body's core temperature plunges and the brain begins to malfunction, nerve endings in the skin begin to misfire. The dying person feels hot, burning hot, and they do the only rational thing you would do if you were suddenly, inexplicably overheating in a cold creek drainage in the middle of the night. They remove their clothing. Susan Clements had been less than 2 miles from a parking lot full of cars. She had a rain poncho. She had a marked trail. Every safety margin that exists in casual hiking was present, and none of it was enough. Of the roughly 100 search and rescue incidents the park responds to each year, approximately 90% involve day hikers, not backcountry campers, not long-distance through hikers with full survival kits. Day hikers, people who thought they were just going for a walk. There is a specific cognitive failure the Smokies seem to induce, is calibration between what you can see and what is actually true. You arrive on a sunny day, the summit is visible, the trail is well marked, the parking lot is full of other families. Everything signals safety. The density of human activity tricks the brain into concluding this is a managed, domesticated environment where the normal rules apply. But the normal rules have a geographic boundary, the edge of the parking lot. Past that line, you are in mountains that have been shaping weather systems since before there were humans to be caught in them. Cell service vanishes. Trail junctions that look clear in sunshine become ambiguous in rain. Your phone's GPS cannot tell you what a wrong turn down into a steep drainage will cost you in miles, in energy, in time before dark. The park has never charged an entrance fee, one of the conditions of the original land transfer. No ticket booth, no mandatory safety briefing. You simply drive in, and because you drove in as easily as you drive into a shopping center, it can feel like the same kind of place. It is not. Return to Dennis Martin. The 1969 search deployed 1,400 people, helicopters, military personnel, tracking dogs. They covered 56 square miles of terrain, and they found nothing. In 1985, a ginseng hunter came forward, claiming he had found scattered skeletal remains of a small child years earlier near Tremont, not far from where footprints believed to be Dennis's had been reported. He had stayed silent because he was harvesting ginseng illegally. A subsequent search found nothing. The FBI maintained files on the case for decades. Those files, 133 pages, were finally released in 2022 after a researcher filed 4 separate Freedom of Information Act requests, the first 3 of which were denied. The files added details. They did not add answers. What the case demonstrates is the absorptive capacity of this wilderness. That a child, 6 years old, in a bright red shirt, being searched for by over 1,000 people in daylight, could simply cease to be findable, tells you something profound about the scale and density of this terrain. On May 21st, 2000, an elementary school teacher named Glenda Ann Bradley, 50 years old, went hiking with her ex-husband, Ralph Hill. He left the trail to fish. She continued alone. About an hour later, Hill returned to find her backpack on the ground. 50 yards away, an adult female black bear and a yearling cub were mauling her body. What followed was a 2.5-hour ordeal, in which Hill attempted repeatedly to drive the bears back, the bears charging at him each time he approached. When rangers arrived and shot both animals, examination of their stomach contents confirmed they had fed on the victim. Glenda Ann Bradley was the first person ever killed by a black bear, in a national park in the United States. The attack broke virtually every established pattern of black bear behavior. Dr. Stephen Herrero of the University of Calgary, the leading scientific authority on bear attacks, stated it was unlike anything he had documented in his career. Then in September 2020, a 43-year-old man named Patrick Madura was found dead at campsite 82 near Hazel Creek Trail. Backpackers discovered an abandoned tent, looked across the creek, and saw a bear. Investigation determined he had likely died from bear-related trauma. 2 fatal bear attacks in the park's entire recorded history, both anomalies, both in the backcountry. The park currently houses approximately 1,900 black bears. On most days, the encounter you have is the one you photograph from a distance and post online. But the park has established, twice in its history, that occasionally a bear decides something different, and there is no reliable way to know, standing on a backcountry trail, which kind of day it is. Here is the most counterintuitive thing about this park. By the statistical measure that actually matters, it is quite safe. When you divide 150 deaths over 17 years by 12 million annual visitors, you get a fatality rate of less than 1 death per million visits. Driving to the park on American highways is statistically more dangerous than being inside it. The danger has a more specific name: the illusion of safety created by accessibility. The Grand Canyon looks dangerous from the rim. The visual information your brain receives, void, drop, distance, registers correctly as threat. The danger is legible. The Smokies look soft. They look like hills. They look like the kind of place where families go in autumn. Nothing about standing on a trail here communicates the same visceral warning as standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon. The river doesn't look fast. The sky doesn't look stormy. The trail doesn't look like it could become invisible in fog. The temperature doesn't feel like it could drop 20 degrees by the time you're too far to turn back. The mountain looks like a postcard, and it is a postcard, but the postcard does not include the fine print. In September 2024, Hurricane Helene moved through the region, the most powerful storm to impact this area in the modern record. On the North Carolina side, nearly 2,000 landslides ripped through the mountains. Roads and bridges disappeared. Entire sections of Interstate 40 collapsed into the Pigeon River. Communities were cut off not for hours, but for weeks. The Smokies sit at the eastern anchor of the Appalachian Mountains, increasingly in the path of major weather events that gain energy over the warming Gulf of Mexico before colliding with ancient topography. The mountains that have always channeled and amplified weather are doing so now in a context where the weather itself is becoming more extreme. Communities that have always treated the park as a backdrop, a view, a destination, are now learning what it means to be inside the geography rather than adjacent to it. The National Park Service does not maintain a centralized, publicly accessible database of everyone who goes missing on federal lands. If someone vanishes in the Smokies, the local jurisdiction handles it. There is no single federal database where you can look up the total number of people who have gone missing inside national parks. The figure of 150 deaths since 2007 comes from National Park Service mortality data released through Freedom of Information Act requests. Even that data contains omissions. A homicide inside park boundaries in 2015 was not recorded in the mortality data released through FOIA. If the basic death data is incomplete, the missing persons data is murkier still. Dennis Martin's case was never officially closed. The National Park Service search ended on September 13, 1969. The mystery has never been solved. The park did not take Dennis Martin with malice. It simply is what it is. One of the oldest, most biologically complex, most geographically confounding places in eastern North America, now absorbing 12 million humans every year who arrive believing they understand it. The Smokies are dangerous in the way that reality is dangerous when it collides with assumption. Dangerous when a father trusts a clear sky and a popular trail, and a storm is building somewhere he cannot see. Dangerous when a family pulls over at the sinks because the water is beautiful. Dangerous when a fire management officer looks at a small blaze and makes a decision that seems reasonable until the wind arrives. The park's beauty is not the disguise. The park's beauty is real. The danger is just as real, layered underneath, patient in the way that mountains are patient. Every year, nearly 12 million people drive through those entrance roads. Most leave safely. The trail markers guide them out. The parking lots hold their cars. Gatlinburg waits at the edge with its restaurants and souvenir shops, and the warm, flat certainty of a tourist town at the base of something ancient. and the mountains receive all of it the way they have received everything for 300 million years, without opinion, without preference, and without memory of who went in and did not come out. If you are planning a hike in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, check the weather at elevation, not the weather in the valley. Tell someone where you are going and when you expect to return. Carry more clothing than you think you will need. Know that cell service is unreliable across most of the park, and understand that the distance between the parking lot and a place a rescue team will struggle to reach can be measured in minutes of walking. The park is worth every visit. It is worth knowing the truth about. The Smoky Mountains are not alone in this paradox. Beloved place concealing a hidden record of danger beneath its most celebrated features. Next time, we go somewhere else entirely. A park that appears on every bucket list, draws millions of admirers every year, and holds a body count that its most devoted visitors never think to question. The park that kills more people per visitor than almost anywhere else in the national park system. And the reason almost nobody talks about it.